Hear the world calling, but son, don't you listen. They're only trying to drag you back into prison, that's right.
Guys, you'll never guess who it is. Welcome back to What Have You, Becca.
We welcome ourselves back to What Have
We'd
You.
like to rejoice that we made it back.
We
for another
accidentally
episode.
missed a week. And
I think by that you mean it's not just a week of the podcast. We missed a week of life.
yeah, I don't know what we did.
I don't think we noticed we missed it. Like, I think we blew right past our deadline.
I feel like we've really not performed well the last little bit because...
But forgive and forget.
Are we like every other week at this point? We've got to buckle up.
We'll focus. We'll get better.
But last week, Rachel had a book deadline, so she kept calling me with frustrated,
I had a
frustrated
combination.
remarks about Sartre.
I renamed my book The Garbage Donut at the last minute. No, I didn't really. It's a joke. It's actually the problem with Sartre. I'll tell you what peeves the heck out of
Everyone,
me.
do you want to know the problem with Sartre?
Let me tell you. No, it was actually
Aside from everything,
Yeah,
that's
but
the
it's
problem?
actually, this is not all in my book. I was trying to just make a point about the contribution that Sartre made to specifically the idea of the self. And I was trying to give he was a messed up dude.
No, and then you have to keep saying,
then
no, really.
I was like, no, listen to me. It was hideous. but then I'm like, I'm not trying to cause a bunch of rubbernecking delays in the book. That's not what we're talking about.
No.
But I do feel the need to make this point. Boy,
Okay.
we are jumping into the deep end with this podcast. But I'll tell you.
Existentialism, anyone?
His lifelong partner, whatever.
One of the.
Yeah, but the one that he, committed to, Simone de Beauvoir, which I think, major French feminist, author of The Second Sex. They were very influential in the feminist movement. That was, a big deal. And they were partners for life, but, intellectual
But
partners.
not exclusively.
No, they, made the deal to just tell each other everything about the rest of their sex lives.
And they weren't married.
No, they were not married, but they did call each other. He would call her my little wife. But they weren't married. And he specifically thought it wasn't maybe we should also have other relationships. He believed it would be a, quote, a good idea for them to pursue other sexual relationships.
What could go wrong?
Nothing.
One thing we've seen
But
from
this is the thing.
human history is
Right.
that doesn't cause trouble.
No, and this is the thing that you have to think about, that they were really influential, and she was considered beautiful at the time. He was not considered beautiful. He was distinctly not attractive. And Camus was the movie star absurdist guy. He was attractive. And he came in and out of some of their foursome times and vacations.
gosh.
But anyways, but Sartre, not cute. Not at all cute.
Wasn't he
And
5 foot flat?
He was 5 foot flat and wall-eyed and dirty. So his fingers were always nicotine stained, and apparently his whole neck was covered in blackhead zits.
Oh!
Of all the additional pieces of news about him. And he one time had such a bad trip on mescaline. So a lot of people did uppers at that time.
Yeah.
Where the standard dose was half of a tablet. He would munch up 4.
Oh.
So he was whizzed up all the time.
Might have had something to do with his skin
He had
problem.
some trouble. But the thing that I wanted to say that had nothing to do with my book, so I didn't say it.
No, you were about to say the hilarious episode that followed his uppers.
Oh, he tripped out on mescaline once and then believed for years that he was being followed by crabs. Not even when he knew it was a hallucination, he saw them for years. He was getting, and one time ran away from them in the streets of Paris. But okay, Sartre was not. But Sartre and Simone,
who are we to say that there weren't crabs pursuing him? The crabs of hell.
Even they might have been after him. So the thing with Simone and Sartre is that they were this couple. If you think about that era, kind of pre-World War II era.
They were the Brangelina.
Major, because they were both high-performing intellectuals. They were considered the most intelligent people of the time. Yeah. She was like
cutting edge.
They were crazy. Yeah, they were really good. And then they were living this life in the Paris cafes. They were always, that was what they were doing.
The one that we romanticize and have everyone drinking absinthe.
Right.
And yet they were covered in zits
and yet this was the life they had. Yeah. But she was this it is so sad, because I read a bunch of their letters that really had nothing to do with my book. It just was trying to it was funny. Their letters are appalling. You really feel like you need to get off the bad bus when you're this is such a bad trip through your life.
But the thing that's amazing is that these are the authors of the worldview that is glamorized in every Disney movie.
Oh yeah, no, totally, and things that we've all believed. These are the authors.
But the origin story is Sartre.
Yes, and Simone was really intelligent. When she wrote The Second Sex, it was super scandalous because, of course, she overshares to the moon and back in that book about her life and her sexual life. But it was revolutionary and all this. But people thought she was beautiful and free and intelligent and countercultural and amazing and but when you read her letters, you were you are joking me. Yeah. That this is the life of this unburdened free woman. And at one point, I just said, this is a terrible, you need a dry erase board to keep up with these people and their devious deeds. But there was a woman, the two of them were always taking on these younger women, and they kept them kind of as mistresses. I mean, they paid their rent. Sartre and Simone never lived together, but they paid the rent of all these other people and their tuition and their painting lessons, and Sartre wrote plays for them to star in. Oh, so sick.
It's all the way.
But this woman comes along
all the way gross.
That apparently was really beautiful, named Olga. She was an immigrant girl who was drifting around needily. So of course they prey upon her.
And she gets raked in by that duo.
So that's who caught her. Poor Olga. So Simone starts sleeping with Olga. And then Sartre really, really wanted to. But Olga would never give in to Sartre. So she never fell for him. But then, after 2 years of him trying to seduce Olga, who they are supporting, her little sister Wanda came to town, and Sartre switches his intentions to Wanda, who he also pursues for 2 years, and then finally gets Wanda. So now we have Sartre and Wanda and Olga and Simone, but Olga starts sleeping with a guy named Bost, who was also part of their crew. But then Simone starts sleeping with Bost, and they're not telling Olga. So it's the secret relationship there. But then Bost feels bad and wants to not sleep with Simone and just stay with Olga. So now we have Simone, the pinnacle of feminist freedom.
Yeah,
Power. And she is blindingly jealous of two women, Wanda and Olga. Well, because of the two men that she wants. She wants Bost because he was actually a nice person.
So let's just pause a second and say, basically, we're living the life of sewer rats.
Essentially. But Bost she wanted because he was a kind person. Sartre was I think kind of the real...
He was an ugly bugly, I think.
But I think he was the real love of her life. He was the person she wanted to want her, but he just kept wanting other women. So but meanwhile, so we have Simone, the ultimate feminist power woman, is financially supporting two women who are sleeping with the men she wishes she was with.
Oh my word.
And it was this period of loneliness for Simone while she's in this position. And it was that is a perfect explanation of basically how her whole life was. Her whole life.
Luckily, they could give us existentialism and
would you just make a mark on society forever and help us all to know how to be?
We feed that line to all of our preschoolers. About just follow your heart, pursue your
You
dreams.
can be whatever you want to be.
Be it
You
all.
too could be a lonely old lady paying for the mistresses of others.
You do you.
Mm.
You
And
know,
then at the end of their
basically-
life, they kind of did that. They were just in this really weird scene. Anyways, it was a very tragic, devastating, awful,
And
ugly
sordid.
story. Yeah. Oh, so bad.
Sorted in all the ways.
So bad. That's not in my book. That's something
That's a behind the scenes look.
That's a behind the scenes of the things I spared you from there, but not here.
The making of.
The making of the book where I had to read about those people and I just couldn't even take it anymore.
But the thing is, I think it's really worth a look at those things because
because
the message has been glamorized
oh
like crazy.
yeah, but
Which is like you invent yourself. All you have to do is take a quick glance through any like diet plan materials.
There were
it
women.
gives you existentialism, but packaged into a diet.
There were a few women, like, they were all, like, their big thing was we're going to be totally transparent. But through her whole life, Simone swore up, down, and sideways she was not a lesbian. Like, she did not sleep with other women. But after she died and her letters were released, it was, like, a long trail of lesbian.
Well, they were all doing this. It was...
No, I know, but I'm saying...
This was
In
Chanel.
her life, they made a big deal about being totally transparent.
Oh, sure.
And she wrote this incredibly vulgar and sexually explicit thing. But even in that, they didn't really tell you that they were actually a whole bunch of jealous idiots having a horrible time. Like, that
Yeah.
was their life. It was terrible. You just can't even with those people.
Yeah.
You're like, how is this even
And it's
happening?
like, luckily you're liberated so you can live the dream.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, we wouldn't want any, provincial things like marriage to tie us down when we could live this free life of debauch that leaves absolutely no one happy.
No.
Like, none of us are having fun.
No, and we've got crabs after us.
Wow, I thought that you
Running
were saying
through the
something
street.
else.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't.
But they probably had that problem as well. And
I just mean it's a strangely, I find that it's an extremely poetically unglamorous to have the phantom crabs running around after you.
There was so much and this thing of when Lewis says that some things are so wicked they're just childish, that
Yes.
it kept being
It's so profound.
It kept being like that because when
Yeah.
Olga and they called all these people their little family, like their children and their little family. It was a very incestuous kind of a grody pants joke that they had going on.
Oh my word.
But Olga and Bast, both people that Simone had slept with, were sheltered by them and would insist on her coming down to tuck them into bed. And I can think of few things as evil as that, but it's also just so dang dumb.
Stupid.
Yeah, like you're just like, that's
Stupid.
like the
Well,
dumbest,
I get this feeling
most
with the
disgusting
the
situation.
whole like transgender movement. I think of Lewis's comment often.
Yeah.
Which is in Paralandra where he says that there's some evil that basically is so evil it becomes childish. And
Well, I think it's
And
when
it's that.
I
It's
thought
like-
that it was the part where the
He's-
unman is
is
saying
ransom.
ransom. Yeah, like over and over.
Yeah. We really were in sync there.
I was
But
impressed
anyway.
by that as well. You'd almost think we were following a teleprompter.
But I just
no.
mean, like, oftentimes you're like, there's a level of wickedness happening here in the transgender movement. And the other part of it is like, take the lipstick off. Like, this is really stupid. Like,
it's not working.
it's basically like, it's like a second grader who's really trying hard to be naughty.
Oh, I know.
Like, haha.
No.
I'm going to put on lipstick. Take that,
Exactly.
world. You know, it's just kind of like, gosh,
No.
guys.
It was really dumb. But
Anyway.
we had a question this week.
We just went down a very weird
I
side
told
shoot.
you, shaboom, into the deep end this week.
Anyway, that's why we're a week late.
Well, that's not why.
To wrap up
I
the
had a book
tangent.
deadline. Then we had Sabbath at our house. Then we had Moses' birthday the next day. Then Lena's birthday the next day.
Yeah.
And then, when we
Meanwhile,
woke
I was-
up after that,
I was just ignoring my life because I have the Reformation banquet coming, and I've been for NSA, and it's in the same place as last year with still no kitchen, and it's still 250 people, and so I've been
So
doing
as you can
an
imagine,
ostrich move.
it's still a piece of
I'm
cake.
putting my head in the sand and I'm saying la 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 la. That's not happening.
Let's not notice that that's coming upon
I
us.
still am reckoning with the menu right now, and this is next week.
Ah,
Anyway,
sounds easy.
it'll be no biggie.
So essy. So the we've been loving our house is being framed.
That's the other thing you've been doing, is building a house.
Yeah, and it's like super exciting, and we have a great builder who doesn't mind free ranging a little bit, but it has caused us our ways in which we're like, oh, we'll just do this. I've been having a week of on again, off again with the kitchen pantry.
I've been having a week off again, on again with your kitchen
I know,
pantry.
because I keep calling Becca to be like, Becca, guess what we did? Guess what happened?
There's been
and
a
it's
lot
all because of a casual comment that we made when in the basement, which is totally kills me that we moved the stairs a foot over to what seemed like a really natural place. Like it
it's
didn't
going to be no biggie.
Well, it is a natural place to have them. It fits, and it was 1 foot over. But as it happened, the cascading effects were intense.
There's always dominoes.
But it is, in the end, I think we're landing it with a much better,
great.
I think it'll be great. I had that conversation with the Lord. I was like, Lord, I think you really want a pantry in this house. Don't you, Lord? I think you do. I just think it would be the wise choice, Lord. Help us figure out where to put the dang pantry. Because I'm confident you want one. Anyways, I'm actually super happy with how it's all worked out. But it has been a very funny in and out, sweating the little details.
I've been painting swatches of paint on my living room wall to wonder to myself if I wanted that color. It would be a wild change, but now I have little patches on my wall.
Yeah, that's nice. That's good. Little blips of promise.
Blips of, well, now I have to paint the living room no matter what.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
that's perfect.
is that my phone
No,
or is that
it was
your...
mine.
Rachel's phone was right
sorry.
next to mine. Anyway. But we did have a question from someone. Rach, summarize.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was thinking many moons ago, we did a full throttle episode sort of on this subject, which we felt the Holy Spirit edited because it disappeared into the void. And so we thought, maybe not. But maybe...
That was a different subject.
It was a different subject. But it was related. It's a related subject.
It was tangential.
It was tangential. Yeah, that's true. So... I guess this question was about why do women desire romance so much? And / is that a good thing or a bad thing? / should your husband be trying to woo you all the time? This is why I actually thought it was related to the should your husband be trying to like win you all the time emotionally and romantically kind of?
Now, can we just throw a pause here and say this is
stop the presses on the episode.
Stop the presses.
Yeah.
I'm going to say one big qualifier right now, which is that I suspect we may get into an endless whirling dervish of qualifiers in a minute, where we try to not do that, me and then I'll qualify you, and then in the end we haven't really said anything. But I do think that if we were men speaking to men, we would be saying something very different than what we're about to say. Like, I think if it was men speaking to men...
You know, I really hope so.
Yeah. Well, the thing that's easy to do is for the women to all get together and have a nice cozy snort about how the men could be doing it better.
Well, and to sketch a picture of the ideal man, which none of us are married to, because how could we be?
And I do think, so this question was actually a really good question, because it was like, what about when you like immerse yourself in romantic movies or TV shows or books, even if they're completely clean, as far as like, they're not sexually problematic, they're not, it's not like adultery or anything, they're just romantic, and you just throw yourself into those.
Right.
Is that a problem? Especially if you're not getting it from your husband, or if you wish you were getting more of it from your husband.
If it's like a vitamin deficiency problem that you're
like,
having.
are you turning there to fill up your tank that your husband should be filling up? And see, the thing is that I do think if we were men and we were talking to husbands, there would be a lot of probably talk of like, look, here's how you could, do better for your wife. Here's what your wife wants or needs and everything.
Right.
But basically, a bunch of women sitting around thinking about what we need and what the husbands ought to do for us.
It just goes nowhere good.
It doesn't, like, the only thing it does is feed discontent.
And actually, I would say it's also something that women are naturally very capable at. We don't need help there. We don't need help at thinking of more ways people could be kind to us.
Nobody needs a podcast saying, here's what your husband could do better for you.
So just trust that we do believe that things could be said to your husband.
Yeah.
Probably.
And
but
someone
it's not
should
us,
say them.
But it's not us who got called to say that.
No, but I think that the whole thing of, like, vicarious feeding on romance elsewhere, I don't think there's anything wrong with a romantic story or romantic movie, but I think there is something very wrong with the way some women approach it. And
like the class of grocery store bodice busters
sure
is a class that is running on something that's wrong.
But
right?
The question did say not sexual.
No, but I'm saying but that genre is
feeding something bad.
It is running on something that it is there because some things are not right.
I just have a question. I feel like this is important.
All right.
Okay. It's obviously true that women desire emotional closeness and romantic closeness and things. Like it's true. But are men wired in such a way so as to desire physical beauty? Yes. Does that mean that they don't need romantic closeness? No, of course not. But what is a way that a husband could basically guarantee that he will be unsatisfied with his wife? Is going to be to throw himself into vicarious feeding of that desire elsewhere.
Right.
And I don't think it makes it any better just because it's not sexual when women do the same thing. They turn away from the man that God has given them and they turn and try to feed it elsewhere. You're basically, I can see why some women would think that this will just bring a spark back to how I will feel about my husband.
But it won't.
It's just going to make you unable to receive it from your husband because you have Mr. Darcy in mind or something. But I also think we would be insulted if our husband was turning elsewhere. And the other thing is, like, think how he could be meeting my needs. Think how he could be sacrificing more of his time and money and effort and thought into how he could meet my needs. And then the question is, well,
how are you doing
flip
that?
it around.
Yeah.
How much time, effort are you putting into meeting his needs that way? Now, they're not the same ones because you're thinking, well, I would do anything for more romance.
What I would like is more romance. And then you say, okay, what would your husband say was the thing that he would love in his marriage? And then if you said, what are the things that would really bless you if I was doing more of this? Or what are the things that would encourage you? Or how can I be, and I think there's the one way where you can have the talk that is talking about your marriage. Like those questions I just said. But what I would think would be a smarter way to go about it, instead of saying we're having the big how are we discussion, just ask him about his work, ask him about what's on his mind, like be supportive, like actually go on a fact-finding mission yourself about what is on his mind, what are the burdens he's carrying, how can I be praying for him, like be an active conversation partner.
But also, I do think we've probably said this before a billion times, but it's in the same way that women need love, men need respect. And so every time you're feeling like a bit needy emotionally, think, okay, well, instead of sitting here wondering how he could fill up my tank, what if I was to think about filling up his?
Right.
And what does he need from me?
But this is what's magical. Is that when we obey God, it gets so much easier. And when we are disobeying, it gets worse and worse. And the thing that is really interesting about this, we're not saying that women don't, like Scripture, there is no discussion of, do women not need respect? Of course they need respect. Like, do men not need love? No, of course they need love. But the areas that wives are commanded to focus is respect, because it is an area where wives are naturally weak. Like, we're good at love and we're not good at respect. And men are good at respecting their wife and bad at loving. But when you have that, you have people living by their own natural impulses, then what you end up with is a wife feeling like her husband's not loving her enough, which makes her overtly disrespect him by saying, why aren't you thoughtful? Why don't you do anything kind for me? Why do you only think of yourself? Which is all disrespect. And then the husband turns to his wife and does not feel full of love and goodwill, does he? He feels instead kind of like, you're the worst. I don't want to be with you.
Right.
Right? And then what you have is two people living by their own weaknesses and enhancing each other's, like being mutually less secure in the relationship. Like it gets worse and worse. Whereas if a wife focuses on respect, the natural result of you focusing on respect is a more natural love from your husband towards you. Like that is they play each other up, like, and in both negative and positive.
It's like the verse about give and it will be given back to you, good measure, pressed down, shaken together and running over will be put into your bosom. For the same measure with which you use, it will be measured back to you.
Yeah.
And so, like, give and it will be given back to you.
And give abundantly, and it will be given back to you abundantly.
But
and
I also feel like you can't miss a chance, though, here to quote Lewis again, because honestly, you could read that hideous strength over and over for different things each time, but the insight into relationships and marriage and men and women, it's so profound. But he has such a great line where he says, you do not fail in obedience through lack of love, but you failed in love because you never attempted obedience.
Yeah.
And the thing is like he's talking to Jane at that moment. Ransome is talking to Jane about an unhappy marriage, and he says, you didn't fail in obedience because you didn't have the love. You don't have the love because you never attempted obedience.
You didn't try to obey.
And so I think that's the key, is like obey first and then see what happens.
Just watch what the natural fruit of you obeying God is.
But it's so much easier to think, but if my husband were to start obeying God, then I would have a much easier time.
Then I would respect him if he was being
and it's kind of like, that may be true, but
it doesn't matter, because the only thing that you can change is your own behavior. You can't go tell your husband he needs to be better at something and expect that to necessarily yield a fruit right away. Like, I'm not saying you can't ever clearly say anything to your husband. I'm just saying that at a time, if things are feeling a little tenuous in some way in your life, it is not the time to go on an accusation station of how everyone is not taking care of you. It is time to not do that.
And of course
it's kind of like it's time to look to your duties.
And there are, of course, times when you've got to go call the pastor. Like if you're in a dark place,
Becca's going to get back into the qualifications. Yeah,
I am. Like, we're not
get those out there.
We're not talking about the extreme cases, because there
we're talking
are
about
those.
The normal,
we're talking
regular
about
people kind of bored and sick of life right now.
Basically, like you and your husband get along, but you're just feeling a bit.
It's probably a whole lot of normal.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot of normal life. And this is something that I have to say, because this is what reminded me of the one that got the Holy Spirit edited. So, the reason I just feel
we did get a bit above ourselves that day.
I think we might have. But the thing that needs to be said here is that concept that your husband should continue to win you is like, that whole Proverbs about he who's found a good wife has found a good thing. And it was like, he's not still supposed to be trying to catch you. Like, how could it be a good thing if you're not steadfast and if you're not
basically
there
like
all
the
the
heart
time?
of the husband safely trusts
Yeah,
him.
like he shouldn't come home to be like, is she on my team today or is she not?
The heart of the husband wonders from moment to moment whether he has this elusive creature.
The heart of the husband wonders what else he could do that would make her like him. Does he need to stop and get flowers because she won't be kind if he doesn't come home with flowers on this day? And you think that's not who you should want to be. And so I think about that. Whatever it is out there where people say to like keep the romance in your marriage alive by like dating each other and being amazing.
Yeah.
And the thing that I just think about that is that that's trying to maintain a very different kind of romance than the romance that is written into the way the world works. Like, you have the kind of romance when you fall in love that is a very intense, I mean, like, there's just no way that 15 years into marriage you and your husband are going to get really butterflies if your elbows touch.
Right.
Like, it's just not happening. Like, that is a time in life when your senses are heightened.
But it's
there's
also
something happening there. But later on, the romance is not less there. It's different. It's maturing.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not absent because it doesn't shock you to hear his voice.
Is, I think we have this weird desire to freeze frame particular moments rather than being grateful for the one that is being handed to us right now. Because when you were in that early moment, it was all about longing for something else.
Yeah.
And now that you have the something else, you're longing
like,
for the original thing.
Wasn't it amazing when we were so excited to see each other?
And so it's kind of like, if you picture, like, I don't know, the process of a bloom on a tree moving from a bloom to a fruit. It's like, it's changing from one kind of glory into another kind of glory.
Totally.
And you can't appreciate the one you have if you're constantly trying to recapture the one that the petals are not there now.
You're missing, what you're doing is living in a state of discontent because the reality is your day, like today, this is the thing that I think the older I get, the more I feel this way. The pictures of my kids, you know, you see a picture of your kids when they were littler and you're like, oh my word, like, I just, like, that was so fleeting. That went so fast. Except for that, a picture from today, I will feel like that in 2 years. I will be like, oh my goodness.
Where did it go?
Like, where did it go? What happened? And it's like that inability to grasp how precious this moment is where we fall into discontent a lot.
But
like, we're like, oh, I wish that we were in this other phase or that
To go
other
back
phase.
to the question, though, so, like, is there anything wrong with the, you know, like, like, there's a certain level of vicarious, like, let's say you're watching your niece go through the same thing, and there's that sort of, like, like a little flicker of, like, remembering what that was like or something.
Yeah.
So there's a way of, like, if you think of, like, trees in different phases, of course you can look at a tree that's in bloom and notice how beautiful it is.
And see the beauty of what God's doing there.
And just be like, oh,
well,
isn't that wonderful?
And that scripture saying that the thing, you know, the way of a man with a maid, like a thing that really is a marvel.
Yeah, and you can see it, and you can just be like, it's lovely, it's beautiful, and you can remember how it was like for you, but that doesn't mean that, like, now you don't have it. You have something different, and you're, you know, further along, but it's not, if you are, like, hating all the fruit on your tree because you wanted it to all be in blossom.
You want to stay in the blossom means
then
that you never understood what it was about in the
You
first
never understood what it was about and what it was for, even though at the time it was all about longing. It was all about longing for something in the future. And so I think that it's all about, like, gratitude, honestly. Like, it's about gratitude for this.
And I would say, because I think that we can't have this conversation without saying this, which is that somewhere in there, and I don't even know where, but I'm sure we could pinpoint it to somewhere strange, like we started out strong with Sartre. There's probably similar strange influences in the world somewhere that started equating, like, that the sexual relationship is entirely one of passion and like emotional, like you're driven to it only through emotional whatever, instead of ever there being a sense of duty. Whereas Paul talks very clearly about duty in that. And it's not to say that the presence of duty removes pleasure and joy, because it doesn't, because it actually enables that.
It creates an environment in which it can live.
Exactly. But you cannot have a healthy sexual relationship with no sense of duty from either of you.
Good heavens.
Because the only thing that's going to happen is that everyone's going to be, like, if you're constantly trying to take the, you know, like, get the weather vane out to see if you feel like being a good wife right now or not.
My word,
it's like, no, like, you made vows. Like, you committed to some things.
But also, I think that everyone is quick to spot the duty that the other one has. Like, even
Yeah.
if it's, he has a duty to still feel infatuated about me. He still has,
a duty to think
I'm beautiful. He
Yeah,
has
it's like,
a
but
duty
what's
to,
my duty?
Yeah.
My duty is to be a present wife. Like, and my duty is, and this is a thing that...
But let's say a present wife, a warm and affectionate wife, not a cold, frigid, aloof.
A willing wife, a wife who is friendly and fun.
Not an expensive vending machine of a wife.
No, my heavenly day. And that's not the heart of a husband safely trusting in
No.
you. Like that's a thing. Like, that's a problem. And I think that this is like, I'm not even sure where that influence came from, but it's part of our whole confusion in life now, for
No, but
sure.
we do think that spontaneous emotion is the only genuine emotion.
No, and then instead of being a faithful,
disciplined emotion.
instead of being a faithful, steady, and true wife, you just are like, why doesn't everyone keep me in the mood to do my duties? It's like, is it really everyone else's job?
It's everyone else's duty
to keep
make
me
sure
in the mood to do my duty.
To make sure that I don't have to
struggle with myself
to do my duty
at any time. I would like to. It's kind of part of that thing that says that you shouldn't be doing a job unless it's so fun for you it doesn't feel like work. Like, when did that become a thing? Because I'm pretty sure people have to work. Like, that's the thing. Is like, a godly husband is the kind of husband, and people actually do say this often, and there's a partial truth in here, which is why it is, I think, why it gets some momentum, is that the idea is to marry someone who you can't help but respect so much that of course you would want to submit to them.
Well, that's good advice.
It's good. It's a good idea to marry someone that you respect enough that you're willing to submit to them all the time.
Yeah.
But the idea that if a husband is doing his job right, you'll never actually have to submit is wrong.
Yep.
Right? Like, it's just wrong. You're probably going to have to submit sometime because he's doing his job right.
Well, the other thing is, like, it's your husband's job to love you all the time, as Christ loved the church, etc. Are you always incredibly lovely? Like, is it always going to
universally,
be,
especially after one of those good snot cries?
is it always going to be just effortless for him?
Oh,
like,
yeah, so easy.
Just like, there's nothing hard about this at all. Now, we want him to love us through thick and thin, when we're attractive or not attractive, when we are thick or we are thin. We want him to love us. So the truth is, are you going to honor and respect him in the same way that you want him to love
when
you?
he's a little postpartum pudgy? Are you going to respect him then?
When it's been a bad day and you haven't had time to shower yet and all of that?
Right,
How do you want him to treat you?
How do you want him to feel about you at such times?
And do you want him to say, well, I just wasn't in the mood to love her this afternoon because look at her.
Have you seen what she looks like
and so
today?
Then you think about when we want our respect or our honor to also be contingent. It's
Right.
like, well, I didn't feel like respecting him because look at him.
I brought up the whole do your duty aspect of this from the perspective of, is your husband obligated to try to win you all the time? And the answer is no, because
He did that once.
He did that.
And you said,
and
okay.
you made a vow before God and a bunch of
these
witnesses that you were going to stick with him until death. And so let's just take a hot minute and acknowledge those vows and acknowledge that you've been won. And then think about, and this is another thing that comes up in That Hideous Strength, but that there is an erotic necessity to that understanding of duty. Like there is
It's the same conversation I was just referencing.
Yes,
He says obedience, submission and authority and obedience are an erotic necessity.
Yes.
And that's when he says you...
And that it's not the fact that you are there. Like, you may have never explored this possibility that you just being obedient is a great thing. And I mean by obedient to God, obedient to your vows. I'm not talking about being subservient in a weird way.
Obeying God and doing what you said you would do.
Right. And so this ties in with something that a long time ago, I heard this advice at a bridal shower where everyone who's giving advice to a new bride is like, don't...
Older women, Christian women.
Bunch of ding-dongs, apparently.
Christian older women teaching the younger women to be bad.
Exactly. Saying, do not feel pressured to have sex on your wedding night. Like, don't, like, you can...
What?
But that was the council was saying...
What?
Because, like, this is all about you. And it was kind of like, wait until you're ready. And now, here's the thing. This is the thing. If a man has now made a public vow to love you no matter what, to be with you, to live as Christ in the church.
With all his worldly goods he has endowed.
Yes, he has given you everything.
And his name.
Let me just tell you something.
He's promised to never look at another woman again.
And the thing that you got to see here is that you signed on the dotted line there. Like that moment is that moment where he earned your trust. Like, he earned that. And I'm saying, this is, again, we have to get out into the qualification cupboard. If there is some major thing in your life that is like a traumatic past or an incident or something where you genuinely need a different kind of approach to this, then he should know about that before, and it should be something that has been discussed.
Talk about it with the pastor.
It should be well established that this is what we're getting into.
Premarital counseling.
Right.
Go.
But if you have the intention to be a godly wife, one of the things you will not do is say never mind on your wedding night. But you thought you were getting something tonight. Never mind. Whoops. Why don't you love me? You're not being kind. I mean, it's horrible. It's the worst thing.
All right, guys.
I can think of nothing meaner to do to a man who is actually making a tremendous commitment for this sexual relationship to be like, count me out. Let's just all take a little moment of pause and say, no, do not do that thing.
Just don't be a stinker for the rest of your marriage either. This isn't just advice for that once. Don't be a stinker.
Don't be a big turd. Like, not ready for the airwaves with that one. Sorry, y'all.
We started this with Simone and Sart and Helga and Olga and Bart, whoever they were.
Wanda. And then we're finishing strong with telling you not to be turds.
This one
what can I say? What can I say when we forget to podcast? We podcast too much the next time. But my point was a serious one.
Golly.
Which is that there should be, like, one of the things that God gave your husband when he gave him you. Becca's not going to be able to get a grip.
We're going to have to put, like, an alert in the summary. If you have children in the car, you might want to hold off till later. Due to Rachel's...
I actually think if you have children in the car, it's not going to be the use of the word turd that took us out of the running.
I was going to say, like, just stop with Simone.
Yeah, that's true. Parental disclaimer.
Just terrible.
Don't hang on while your children are on board. Well, my point is just that God the way you should want it to be is that when God gave your husband you as his wife, that he gave your husband a great grace, that he gave him a gift that is better than your husband ever would have expected. Not an endless scavenger hunt to get on your good side.
Oh, my word.
Like that is a really sad thing. You know, like to think like, well, I'll just give him the cold shoulder until he tries hard enough to find out what I am mad about. No, and then when he says what's wrong, I'll say, if you don't know what's wrong, then I don't think you're a very Christian husband. You know, like, don't do that kind of thing.
Oh, my word. And you're going to start complaining of emotional abuse in a minute.
Yes. And just deal with it. That in many ways, you know, the whole thing, like, in many ways, that you are a simple creature comfort for your husband. And that should be something that you think is glorious and good and right. And God's gift to you also.
Give yourself. Give yourself. Don't sit there trying to eke yourself out in dribs and drabs. Just give yourself. You know?
Right? Like, just be, and one of the things that I think is wise, this is why apparently I'm not invited to wedding showers where they give advice.
Because you'll say, don't be a turd.
like, all right, everybody. No, but one of the things that I think is important in this whole discussion is that there are simple things, like there are a lot of rules that our parents have always taught in marriage, things like not to be, not to have people over when you're out of fellowship with each other, and not to talk about your big problems after 10 p.m. when no one has an eyeball on it anymore.
When
that's
it's a
not
runaway train.
That's not the time to reflect on what a bad mom you are and how bad your marriage is and how bad it's all going. Like, wait until the morning for that one. And things, real simple counsel, like ways to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I would add to that, just for the wife, is to not be a woman who is hard to get and who is willing to say no, or don't touch me, or I'm too tired, or back off.
No, and I have a headache, and who are you anyways?
Don't make excuses, and that does not mean don't be honest.
No.
That does not mean don't say, like, I'm tired, or what. It doesn't mean that. It means don't be in the command position wrapping someone's knuckles with a ruler.
Give yourself.
Be a wife.
Give freely.
Be a wife. Like, the wife is a different category than the person you're trying to woo. It's person who got wooed.
Can I start again with another Lewis quote? Which is...
It's like maybe a record for
excellent.
us. Especially because we spake one in unison.
Yeah, we did. But it's so profound. And it is, to desire the desiring of her own beauty is the vanity of Lilith. To desire the enjoying of her own beauty is the obedience of Eve. Mm-hmm. And it is such a small difference, and it makes all the difference in the world. Do you want your beauty to be desired, or do you want it to be enjoyed?
Yeah.
And that is like, it's a world of difference.
It's the difference between
you
want your husband
marriage
to
and porn.
enjoy you,
yeah,
or you want the men on the street to pull over to whistle at you.
Yeah, but it's the difference between marriage and porn. It's like
a big difference.
It's a world of difference, but it's also
if you desire the kind of beauty that will be enjoyed by the man who gave his life to you, then you're gonna have to go ahead and be available. let's just say it. That's how it is. That's just and the word.
Also,
I speak you the word. And I have to say,
when women are going around giving terrible advice like that, I'm just going to say there's a Bible verse about it, guys. There's a Bible verse.
Well, and there's another thing that you got to say. If the Bible, what Bible verse are you going to say?
Do not refrain.
Yeah, no, don't
from
refrain.
one another.
Doesn't even matter if you're nervous. Right.
And it says, but unless like mutual agreement, it doesn't say don't refrain unless the wife has decided to get bossy lately.
I thought you were going to say, that the husband is commanded to let his wife's breast satisfy him. Or who are you to stand in the way of him being obedient to the word?
No, I just meant
no, but that's the thing.
If you're not allowed,
commanded, being a godly husband is to enjoy your body, then who are you to be like, back off from being a godly husband?
No, but also you're not allowed to make him back off. There's a whole thing about that.
No, it's not your.
Can't remember the reference right now. It's in the New Testament.
It's in there. It's
in the New Testament, guys.
And the other thing,
you can't get off of it by saying it's the Old Covenant.
No, I think that this is all so countercultural.
Oh, it's terrible. Yeah.
The world believes that sex is all about just what you feel like when you feel like. That's it. Like there's nothing binds it other than your own emotions.
There's no structure.
There's no rules here. There's no boundaries.
And
there's no time that you ought not to do that.
When you go for the world of no boundaries, you're back to the sewer rats.
Yeah, but when you go for the marriage covenant and the marriage vows, you should just go ahead and be all in. Like,
you should.
Just go ahead and be like, this is what I'm here.
And it may turn out to be surprising when you start doing what God said, that things start looking up.
There's a little more romance in my life.
There's more romance.
Oh, turns out my husband really appreciates an available wife.
And life is good.
Your husband might be like, what on earth happened? Like, how did things get so much better? But this is something I'd like to say. If, for some possibility, you've been convicted by what we were just talking about, Just saying. Maybe someone out there was a little bit. If so, I highly, highly recommend jumping off the high dive on this and out yourself. Tell your husband you were convicted. Tell him this is what you're thinking about. Tell him this is going to, go ahead and acknowledge you weren't doing it right. Because the desire to keep it a secret so that nothing changes in the power balance will probably be high. The desire to not say, I was convicted of this, that I need to be more available.
But I was going to actually say something that might be, it sounds actually like almost the opposite, but I think we're just talking about two different aspects of it. I was going to say, don't begin this with a big questionnaire of, do you think that I'm not?
No!
Do you think I'm not available enough? Because what's he going to say?
Am I not sexy to you when I'm frigid?
But the thing is if you start it with a big questionnaire, especially if things haven't been good,
nothing like putting him on the hot plate.
That he will not feel ministered to by you issuing him a fill-in-the-blank test about your, how you've been.
Do you think that I have a duty to want to have sex with you when I don't want to?
But I was going to say, just try obeying without making it into a legal event.
Yeah, no, totally. When I said out yourself, I mean that sometimes when you're convicted of something, there's that temptation to sweep the conviction right out under the rug where no one will know it ever happened.
But I was just going to be more just try obeying.
Just try obeying and being more fun, and then see how that works out for you. And this is a good time to mention that how everyone's wrong about the Puritans. The Puritans are the ones that are much maligned in history as being uptight and no fun, and definitely not at all supportive of sex. I mean, when you say puritanical, everyone knows what you mean, and it's not that. But in Puritan wedding vows, the wife used to vow to be bonny and buxom in bed.
Oh, I forgot.
Yeah, straight up in church, saying, I hereby commit myself to being bonny and buxom in bed. And I just have to say, just imagine the scandal today. And it's those Puritans. Those Puritans are way too racy with their wedding vows. I forgot. So I'm just saying, just keep it in mind that you're in good company with those Puritans.
Yeah, and we have to wrap it up with a tip now, which
I think we've really covered the waterfront of tips. Specifically, don't be a turd.
What I'm going to say. That big, ugly, Bloomsday t-shirt that you were going to wear to bed tonight? Don't.
My tip is, if you're married, act like it.
Yeah.
Whoa.
That too.
Fancy that.
Too.
Fancy like you're a married person. All right, all.
Guys.
We felt like no other tips could be safe at such a time as this. So we hope that next week we'll do one the kids can listen to. We're going to just name
this one PG-13.
Yeah, yes, we will.
Have fun, guys.
Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.